To discuss, I'm pleased to be joined now on the programme by Robert Proctor. He is a science historian at Stanford University. Hello to you and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Nadia.
Look, back in 2016 when Trump first won the US presidency, you wrote that about climate change in the age of ignorance. I wonder then, with Trump back imposing all of these sweeping changes, how do you view that age of ignorance today?
Well, I think it's much more insidious, much more powerful. We're in the age much more of social media and global strongmen. And so you've got a kind of ignorance from above through these strongmen, people like Trump, and you got ignorance from below from social media. And Trump in particular on climate, he loves oil, he loves what he calls clean coal, even has declared his love for plastics. And America is already the leading producer of petrochemicals, and it's going to get worse. He's curbing many of our legal agreements. He's punishing universities by increasing their costs, and he's firing. He's been firing thousands of scientists in a kind of blitzkrieg against everything we know about climate up to this point.
Look, though, back when he was first in power, Trump was pretty aggressive then on climate as well, wasn't he? He pulled the US out of the Paris 2015 climate deal the first time around as well. So is he more aggressive this time? More efficient? More dangerous? How would you characterize it?
All of those things, yeah. He now has all branches of government. He has the Congress, he has the Senate, he essentially has the Supreme Court, and he's got a bunch of compliant Republicans in the majority. So he also has much more experience, and he's much more lawyered up, and he's got Project 2025 behind him. And so he is moving at a much faster pace with much less resistance.
And look, you mentioned Donald Trump's love apparently for plastic. And one of his more headline-grabbing announcements is that the United States will bring back plastic straws. Let's just perhaps listen to what it is that Trump had to say about that.
These things don't work. I've had them many times. And on occasion, they break, they explode. If something's hot, they don't last very long, like a matter of minutes, sometimes a matter of seconds. It's a ridiculous situation. So we're going back to plastic straws. And I don't think that plastic's going to affect a shark very much as they're munching their way through the ocean. Okay.
And look, Mr. Proctor, you can hear the kind of chuckles in the room there when he's making that announcement. It's not the most coherently explained idea by the US president. But I wonder, sort of behind the way that he talks about it, is there something, I don't know, thought out, even sort of malicious in the way that Donald Trump uses this kind of simple language to get to something that is actually quite dark and quite dangerous?
Of course, that's his appeal. He's always talking about common sense. He says he knows better than anyone. He talks, people credit him with telling it how it is. He's a very calculatedly uncalculated political figure. And so he has this appeal, which has done an end run really around the scientific establishment.
And let's talk about maybe global warming specifically, because look, whether Donald Trump believes that global warming is real or not remains an open question. But what we do know is that there are more and more Americans who are deeply skeptical, or perhaps who even outright deny that climate change is a reality. And look, you mentioned social media a bit earlier on. So I wonder how much of this sort of distrust when it comes to the climate crisis can we attribute to Donald Trump himself, and how much can we attribute to these kind of wider factors? You touched on a few of them earlier, social media being one of them, a declining trust in institutions, not just in the United States, but in other countries as well.
Well, remember, he has allies now in social media, and so in a sense, he is powering a lot of the social media from below through his Truth Social, through his alliance with Elon Musk, the world's richest man, the owner of X, now Twitter. And so he's able to marshal these forces more effectively. And look, he's also able to exploit some poverty of communication, you might say, among scientists when scientists talk about 1.5 or 2 degrees centigrade warming. Trump will point out, well, it's 2 degrees warmer in my living room than my bathroom, so what's the big deal? So he's a master of trivialization, and a master of exploiting the poverty of the communication skills of many scientists.
And as you say, then, it's not simply that Trump is implementing these policies that are bad for the planet. He's using his language to sow disinformation about climate change. And I suppose the big question for an individual like you, for the scientific community more broadly, is, look, how do you fight that?
Yeah. Well, it's going to be hard. The resistance is taking shape, but it's going to be slow. We're likely to see some of the most powerful resistance coming from the courts, because we're moving toward what many people consider a constitutional crisis. When Trump is firing thousands of scientists from the Department of Energy, from the Environmental Protection Agency, from the National Institutes of Health, he's essentially usurping the role, the power of the purse that's supposed to be allocated to Congress. Congress has allocated these funds for research, and if he cuts them off, that could provoke a constitutional crisis, and the courts may have to decide whether he's allowed to do what he's doing. But then if Trump violates the court's rulings, that'll put us in entirely new constitutional realm.
Just a final question for you on RFK, who has now been confirmed as Trump's new Secretary of Health, a vaccine skeptic on the record. What do you make of his appointment?
Well, he is a real wild card because he comes from an environmental progressive background. And he admittedly has some odd ideas and some dangerous ideas about vaccines, but he also knows that prevention is more important than cure. And so what I would anticipate is him pushing for getting rid of sugar in schools, getting rid of a lot of chemicals in foods, and possibly even getting rid of the nicotine in cigarettes, which is already on the table at the Food and Drug Administration. So he is a real unknown, and could really make a substantial positive difference in the midst of all of these other horrors.
All right, a fascinating message. Thank you so much indeed. It's been a pleasure to speak to you today. Robert Proctor talking to us there from Stanford University.